And we really want to focus on this drug pricing issue because you really have been at the center of this in a fairly controversial way. Looking back now on your experience at Turing and with Daraprim, do you have any regrets about how fast you took the price up, how far you took it, or how public you were?
Well, I think that, when you're caught in the perfect storm of political season, it's easy to become a target for unwarranted, I think, aggression. And if you look back, one of the things that I noticed as I look back is that the President Obama and his administration said absolutely nothing about drug prices throughout the entire period. And I asked one of the people in his camp, why is he staying silent on this? Why isn't Joe Biden saying something? Why isn't President Obama saying something? He said very curtly, they're not running. And so it's really a populist issue, and I think was blown out of proportion. And so in terms of regret, I think maybe not seeing that as acutely would have been a minor regret, but because the price increase has stuck, so to speak, I don't really. That's the main mission, was to raise the price and have it generate increased revenue. That's happened. So I'm happy with respect to that.
So apart from the politics, and perhaps in business you can never put it entirely apart from the politics, as you learned, but apart from the politics, in the end, did it benefit the investors in your company, in Turing, the way that you handled this? Would you have made more money for your investors if you had not raised it as fast, not been as public?
In that sense, it was difficult to sort of do anything. In terms of the investors, from a cash flow perspective, it makes no difference. In fact, you're better off raising it faster, I think. From the perspective of things like multiples and exit opportunities and brand name and things like that, there was certainly some damage done. Again, I think it was somewhat unexpected. When I ran Retrophin, I raised the price of a drug 20-fold, and there wasn't any stories about it.
How do you pitch what seems to me an ideological pursuit to be the poster boy of capitalism versus actually running a company and having to go against DC, which you have to kind of negotiate and dance around to have a successful company? Can you do both, be the CEO of a company in this country and be the poster boy of capitalism?
It's hard, isn't it? I mean, in your prior segment, we were talking about all these criminal charges against banks.
Yeah.
And, we have an administration that's very thuggish and bullyish when it comes to companies. They look at them as targets, and people as well, as targets to shake down, in essence. And actually enforcing justice is not their goal. I think their goal is to make a name for themselves, to extract these billion-dollar settlements. And one has to tread very carefully, and that's why some of the greatest business people have kept the lowest profiles.
And particularly in the pharmaceutical area, because people feel very strongly about their prescription drugs. I mean, regular people, voters out there, which means politicians get involved and government gets involved. So did you actually put Turing to some extent at risk of the government coming in? Because if you push too far on the government and pharmaceuticals, they will come down on you hard.
Absolutely, and learning at a young age that, the government in many ways is an apparatus of vengeance, and to be a little cynical about it is frustrating. At the same time, nobody talks about sparsentan, the drug that I in-licensed, which was on the shelf at Bristol Myers Squibb. In-licensed, it just hit its primary endpoint in a phase 3 trial for focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, a trial I planned with NYU. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the new chemical entities I put into the clinic. We like to talk about one basically insignificant drug at the end of the day relative to larger drugs in the pharmaceutical.
Well, let's talk about something a lot of people are talking about, and it's the Trump presidency.
Yeah.
You've brought up the issue of populism and how drug pricing became a populist issue. Do you think Donald Trump makes it a populist issue as well?
I think that the media made it a populist issue. If you look at the Proposition California that people wanted to pass to lower drug prices, they even ran an ad with my face on it in during the World Series, which was, my family was shocked to see, and the proposition failed. And this is one of the most progressive, sort of liberal countries, states in the country. The proposition failed by majority vote.
You say the media made it an issue, and I always love it when people come on the show and say that. Hillary Clinton was running. She tweeted about it.
She's an apparatus of the media.
Bernie Sanders talked.
He's also an apparatus of the media.
An apparatus of the media, using the media to get their message across, because that's what people do, and the media's here to.
It's no secret
to be an ideas exchange.
It's no secret that the media plays favorites.
Well, but
I wouldn't go as far as that, Martin.
Okay, whatever.
But Martin, do you have it the right way around? I mean, to some extent, the media and politicians follow where the people are, and you said it was insignificant. It was insignificant not to the people who needed to take it. It was terribly important. If you have people out there who don't have a lot of money and they need to take a drug like Daraprim, there's going to be consequences, and that's just not the media concocting.
There isn't consequences. They have insurance. I don't know if you're familiar with healthcare insurance.
I've heard of it, yes. Thank you.
90% of Americans have it. Our president forced us to get it, I think. Do you remember that? Because I paid a fine because I don't have healthcare insurance. I actually had to pay the IRS a fine for not having healthcare insurance.
Well, your health insurance must be really great, because a lot of people's healthcare insurance actually doesn't cover 100% of the cost.
As far as I know, Daraprim is covered by every major insurer. But with respect to what we were talking about earlier, ultimately think that Trump's going to be a fantastic president. He's going to bring more competition for drug prices.
Yeah.
He's going to solve it in a capitalist way. Right now, getting a generic drug approved takes 5 years.
So this is the problem. So let's go back to capitalism, because the ultimate problem is that for the healthcare industry, it's almost seen as monopolistic because it's so hard to get drugs through the FDA. So you think that is going to solve that solution, that problem?
You know, drugs are a small... Go ahead.
Beyond that, my question would be the pricing issue. It's going to get a whole lot harder to lift your prices if they do address that, isn't it?
Well, I'd start by saying that drug pricing is only a small part of healthcare expenditures. Physicians are the biggest part. We don't talk about physicians. Their prices are rising as fast or faster than drug prices, as are hospital and medical device companies. So you want to pick on drug companies, but drugs are actually the best cost-effective solution for healthcare. You know, they're algorithmic, they're very modular, whereas expansive things like how do you do a surgery or something, it's very much more complex and harder to control.
Well, that's very fair, and we should have some healthcare providers come in here and defend themselves. But right now, let's talk about drugs.
Yeah.
And there's no question that the price of drugs is going up faster than the cost of living. And
yes, it is.
And that as a percentage of GDP in this country, healthcare costs are, what, 18%, something like that, moving toward 20?
Absolutely.
Much higher than any other developed country. When you have, for example, the health insurers pay really high prices, that gets expressed through premiums sooner or later. So, it doesn't just go away.
Of course it does. And so the question is, as GDPs grow, and we're at the top of that pack, right? We're the leader.
By a long shot.
I think what happens is that we learn as a society that what we prize in life is our health. And we're going to spend more and more on our health than ever before. And that's a good thing. I think it's a mark of a civilized country.
So you do it again?
Of course. Shareholders, and in fact, you've seen Valiant, was castigated for their price increases. They raised prices after the Senate committee. Pfizer raised prices of Viagra 13%. I look at Bloomberg for inflation. I don't see anywhere where they need to keep up with 13% inflation. So it's not like I'm surprising and saying I'd do it again. Everybody's doing it. In capitalism, you try to get the highest price that you can for a product.
This pursuit, though, and I go back to what I've called an ideological pursuit, does it damage your ability to run a company again? It
depends. It depends on how much money you have, right? If you look at a guy like Trump or Icahn, they've done things over the course of their career that were unpopular. I mean, I remember when Icahn was a child, but he bought an airline company and tried to fire everybody. It was one of the most unpopular men in the 80s. So these kinds of things take time for people to understand, and I think that maybe in the short run there's some dislocations, but I've also made a lot of fans in the free market world.
You didn't make too many fans among the prosecutors.
Correct.
There's a little indictment. Now, it doesn't have to do with Turing. It doesn't have to do with Daraprim, different set of circumstances. Where does that case stand at this point?
Well, the trial is going to start in June. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be quite a circus, an exciting circus. We're going to win by a landslide.